Okay, I'd like to talk a little bit about how the radiation will propagate along the water from Fukushima to the west coast of America, specifically California, Oregon, and Washington. There are basically two types of beaches. There's the rocky beach, which is generally defined by kelp beds off of the coast, and tidal pools of rock, which actually are pretty biodiverse. And then there's the sandy beaches. So this is a representation from the Woody Museum of the sandy beach. You got your ocean birds, sand dunes, coyotes, rabbits, and sea turtles. And then here's some representations of the different little animals, sand crabs and everything. So Fukushima is going to basically last, for all intents and purposes, forever. 80, 90 years, be contaminating the water. So it just constantly keeps building up and up and up. I've talked about how the kelp beds are going to get it, but let's talk about how it gets into these sandy beaches. And this is a pretty typical sandy beach representation. You notice the sand dunes in the back. When there's a storm surge, there's high tides, there's low tides. And it's pretty easy to see where the high and low tides are. But when there's a storm surge, you can add about 100 yards to how much water is going to get thrown up on shore. So where you see these sand dunes coming back, the storm surge will take it up to that point. So the cesium, as it gets in the food chain, you see the birds out there, they're eating animals, fish, whatnot, and the concentration builds up, and then when the higher up the chain you are, it's called bioaccumulation. It builds up. Well, if they fall and land in the ocean, it's a net sum. Nothing really changes. It just keeps. Like I said, it's going to keep building and building. Punch in Half Moon Bay radiation. You can check all over YouTube of all the places that are getting contaminated along the west coast. Like I said, the notable exception to that's going to be right at the mouth of the Columbia River. So Seattle and Tacoma are going to be spared because of the overpressure, and a couple of miles each side of the opening there. But as the animals, specifically the birds, eat the fish, they bring the carcasses in. Generally, they don't eat it on the ocean. They bring it in the land and eat it. And the carcass, wherever they bring it into, the cesium and the strontium that's in the bones stay there and contaminate the sand dunes. Said the poor little sea turtles, they're swimming in it, and a lot of it will build up on the outside of their shells, and they come ashore and bring it up. So it just constantly gets building up and building up. So there's already vast dead areas in the Pacific because of Fukushima, and there's a gag order. They have their version of the Patriot Act in Japan now. You can't really talk about it. One little interesting thing on YouTube you can punch up is Japanese mayor denies radiation problems as his nose bleeds. So here's this mayor, and he's saying, oh, there's no problem with the radiation, and his nose just starts bleeding during the interview. Anyway, it's one of the great problems facing us here, Fukushima, so check it out. If you like this video, I'd appreciate it, and if you'd subscribe, I'll have more, try to do one a week. Thank you. Bye.